share my screen. Well, there's the window. Here's this window. Here we go. Make sure that works. All right, now zoom in a bit. We can see. Okay. Mikhail, I'm going to preempt you right quick to make a quick announcement about the 1.29 release. Today's supposed to be branch cut, but I believe it has been delayed based on what Francisco said in the 129 release channel chat. The branch is created, but all of the full branch cut steps have not been finished yet. So he says small delay of 1 or 2 days for branch cut. But the branch has been created, so if you get a PR merge, you will likely want to add the release 1.29 cherry pick label and check the release 1.29 channel to ensure that if it's a new feature, you are in before feature freeze. So I'm going to make a quick update there. Anybody have anything to add to any release notifications that we should be aware of? All right. In that case, Mikhail, it's up to you to talk about ambient multi-network beta.
Yeah. Hello, folks. We haven't talked about it for a while, so I thought I'd bring it up, given that there's been a whole release now in the current state. And in particular, to make the discussion specific, I wanted to understand how folks feel about the issue with metric reporting and whether we should consider metric reporting a blocker for better. There's a linked issue. You can take a look at it. But to summarize, basically for traffic that crosses to another network through the East-West gateway, we'll lose some of the labels, which basically makes those metrics for traffic crossing the networks not particularly useful. Yeah, and with that in mind, we kind of have to return back to the design board and to the whiteboard to design a little bit how do we want metrics to look in presence of the East-West gateway. I found an issue, the label for both L4 and L7. The L4 and L7 metrics are a little bit different, so we should really consider them separately, but there is some kind of issue for both of those. So I looked back at the original sort of design for ambient metrics, and it, not surprisingly, didn't consider East-West gateways. So there is an open question of how do we want the metrics to look like in presence of multiple networks in the first place. I'm working at the moment on the design document with some kind of proposal for what we want the metrics to look like and how to implement that. But I wanted to bring this conversation here just to ask like what people feel about it, about the metrics, and considering it as a blocker for beta. Any thoughts?
Just thinking about it at a high level to digest it. So basically, can you talk about why the labels are missing at a high level?
Yes.
What are the issues?
So like TLDR, there's a combination of issues, but basically in ambient for L7 metrics, we are kind of relying on the metadata discovery. So it basically means that waypoint looks at the selected endpoint IP address, and based on that, pick the metadata. That's the sort of default method we're currently using. And when East-West gateway is there, the waypoint just doesn't know what workload we are going to pick because that's what East-West gateway will do. So it only knows the East-West gateway address. We could, in principle, put East-West gateway into the labels. But that creates another issue. Purely logically, East-West gateway is a L4 proxy, so putting it in L7 metrics is a little bit weird. It's also different from how Sidecar reports the metrics, though we shouldn't compare those directly. But it also, if you look at how like dashboards like Kiali would interpret it, you would see like sort of if you look at the traffic graph, it would mean that there is basically a gap there, right? It cannot connect one workload to another with like a line, which is also not great. So I think we should, in general, preserve those dashboards for users, even in multi-network cases. So that's for L7s. For L4 metrics, the issue is slightly different. Currently, L4 metrics are only exported by ztonals. So now when you add an additional hop to the L4 traffic, like for example, from ztonal to waypoint, from waypoint to east-west gateway, from east-west gateway to ztonal, you out of 3 hops, you only see 2 reported in the metrics. So you again have a gap. It's slightly different issue, but it's still an issue of like, if you look at the Kiali dashboards and look at the traffic, how it flows through the network, it appears like a gap there.
And the thing that's omitted is the east-west gateway in that view?
Yes, though they are still missing metrics there, but for a different reason, and that is relatively easier to fix, but yes. And like gap basically exists when you add waypoint, and if you don't add waypoint, you have like metrics reported from the source to the east-west gateway and from the east-west gateway to the destination. But one of those reports is a little bit botched, and some labels are missing there. But it's a minor issue; it's easier to fix.
Right, so there's a kind of logical question, right? Like we don't terminate H-bone going through the east-west gateway, right? Like this is with double H-bone.
With double H-bone, we terminate the outer, but we don't terminate the inner H-bone, correct?
So is it an issue of context that we only have one L7 aware proxy, and that one L7 aware proxy does not know the final destination of the traffic?
Yes.
Is that
well?
Okay. In a lot of cases, if you're always at the waypoint in the destination cluster, then it would. But if we go to the local waypoint first, then the L7 proxy doesn't know where the traffic ends up.
So the thing is, if we have 2 waypoints, right, in the source cluster and destination, which would be the typical setup and the only setup we really support, we still traverse only one of those, right? Because we don't want to apply L7 policies twice.
Right.
We don't make any promises about which one it's going to be, right? But only one of those is traversed. So there is only one point where we can export L7 metrics if we don't start adding L7 metrics somewhere else. And that is sort of a bigger issue of like, how do we want L7 metrics to look like? And I think there is a reasonable way to make it, but I didn't put it on writing yet.
Okay, so the issue with local waypoint to remote endpoint, there's no way for the local waypoint to know which actual endpoint it ended up at through the east-west gateway unless that's encoded in H-bone.
Even if it's encoded in the H-bone, there is a problem still. This problem can be overcome with a relatively hacky, but like there is a solution for this. But the technical issue there is that in the structure of the waypoint sort of envoy configuration, you have one listener that accepts the connection, terminates the H-bone. You have then another listener that processes the HTTP traffic, and you have yet another listener that wraps it into H-bone to send it out, right? And the problem there is that Envoy in general does not allow you to propagate metadata or filter state from upstream to downstream through the internal listener. It's possible to work around it, but that's the technical limitation of Envoy. It's like basically how it always worked. Yeah. So even if we like in the outgoing listener can extract from the response in H-bone like what is the actual workload that we reached out to, we wouldn't be able to propagate it to Istio stats filter, like not easily at least.
Yeah, that's probably a reasonably complicated piece of work. But
yeah.
On the other hand, there's probably no other way to solve the problem of not knowing what the endpoint was, right?
Yes, I think ultimately that's what we will have to do if we want to provide this information, right? Let's put it this way. There are some uglier sort of options that I don't really want to go to. Like, for example, we can, I don't know, generate a fake endpoint for each potential remote destination. But it kind of goes against the original sort of idea of using this double H-bone and East-West gateway being like purely L4 proxy and not distributing all this metadata to all the networks. So I don't want to go there, and it's uglier than whatever solutions I have for the original problem in mind. So I wouldn't go there.
Okay, so the other options are, since the control plane sees all the endpoint state on the right across all the networks.
Yep.
The East-West gateway could be a transparent forward proxy. The waypoint picked the endpoint for it. Right, just like it would on the local network.
Yes, but for that you will have to each waypoint will have to be aware of all workloads on all networks, right? Because you still need
right.
to
Yeah. No.
right.
Yeah. Right now, only Istio is, but
yeah,
that's theoretically possible. If
yes, exactly. But just to return the conversation a little bit in the original direction, I think like I will have a design and we will be able to discuss it in more details. Hopefully by Wednesday, I will share something in the working group meeting. For now, I just want to understand where do we stand on like beta readiness and metrics. Like, do we consider metrics like reporting unknown values as a blocker for like ambient multi-network beta readiness? My first instinct that yes, because beta readiness kind of implies some level of production readiness, and if you don't report metrics, is it really production ready? But I wanted to hear what everybody else has to say.
Mike, are we not reporting metrics at all, or are we reporting?
We report metrics as usual. So all single network traffic is covered. It's when the traffic becomes multi-network, it crosses the network boundary, we still report the metrics, but they have like a bunch of unknown values that make those metrics like not super useful by themselves when you inspecting cross-network traffic, because you don't really know what network the traffic went to, right? This is like some of the basic gaps. But it also breaks some of the dashboards, like Kiali, for example. If you look at some of the useful graph that they built, like the network graph, how like different nodes communicate to each other at different levels, you will see something like pretty weird there that it's hard to interpret for a person who doesn't know, is not aware of all the issues with metric reporting.
And does this affect traffic that does not traverse a waypoint?
No. No, sorry, like L4 traffic has issues as well, right, that I mentioned. But it only affects the traffic that goes to a different network through East-West gateway, right? Both L4 and L7 traffic is affected slightly differently. So those are technically two different issues, but they're affected somehow.
Okay.
Would fixing the L4 metric, like, well, let me ask it this way. Is fixing the L4 metrics feasible before 129 code freeze?
If we push hard enough to that, to do that, we can try. But I think the biggest problem is figuring out how do we want those metrics to look like. Hopefully for L4 metrics, it's a little bit less controversial. but we still need to get to an agreement on what the metric should look like, and before implementing it. And once we have that, implementation should be more or less like just implementing all the relevant stuff, which is we can try to make it happen before the feature freeze or before the release.
Yeah, I'm inclined. I'm inclined to say if L4 metrics are broken, then it wouldn't be beta ready. I think there's an argument to be made that because of Envoy implementation limitations that we're going to try to work around, and the ambient architecture with L7 proxies, that like L7 metrics having some unknown values is something we're working around, but we are like production ready. We're just going to enhance the L7 feature over time. L4 not being ready, I think, since that's just the basics of the ambient architecture, those still having unknown values for metrics is more of a concern. And so like the hypothesis for us for a long time in the community with ambient has been, we want to be able to have people deploy, if you just need L4, then you're working. And so if you imagine someone who just needs L4 multi-cluster, that experience should work. And so I would say I would probably block beta readiness on L4, but not L7.
Kit, one question. When you say L4 multi-cluster, you mean L4 multi-cluster? Do you consider L4 metrics in presence of waypoint, right? Because the way I think about metrics in ambient is that we report L4 and L7 metrics, and those are both like different views of the same thing. It seems to be slightly different from how sidecar metrics.
I see the distinction you're making. Yes.
Right. So we can talk about L4 metrics in presence of waypoints or in absence of waypoints. Right. So that's
great clarification. Yes. So let me ask then. What does the non-waypoint metric situation look like across network?
It's still broken in the sense that we report some unknown values, but there is a relatively easy fix for that. Essentially, all the metadata is like one way or another exists. It's just the source, the tunnel. When it talks to East-West gateway, it doesn't have access to all of it. So we can actually make it work somewhat. If we think of like a reporting of L4 metrics in a similar way how we reported this waypoint present, like we source the tunnel reports a hop from source to waypoint, and the destination the tunnel reports hop from waypoint to the destination. We can similarly report a hop from source the tunnel to East-West gateway, and from East-West gateway to the destination the tunnel. Right, that could be done with relatively small amount of work.
That's not quite the same thing, right? Like waypoints are a functional, intentional policy enforcement point put into the network by users. East-West gateways are pure infrastructure.
Yes.
So the metric, we care about them from a metric standpoint in different ways. Right, the metrics have to tell you that they went to a waypoint, right? Because you're even crossing an identity barrier, that boundary at that point. East-West gateways, like that's not really what's happening, right? Because we have double H-bone in place.
So you prefer not to report in L4 metrics that we cross to different, that we cross through East-West gateway?
I think we'd like to know it, but it wouldn't, in an ideal world, right? The source C tunnel would report almost exactly the same thing it would report as if the endpoint was on the same network. It would just add the fact that it went through an East-West gateway, which may be in an orthogonal metric. Or there would just be like a flag which said that this crossed an East-West gateway, right, as a property, an additional property or dimension on the metric, but nothing else about the metric is different. If that makes sense.
So, like
because there's end-to-end communication, right, between the client Z tunnel and the destination Z tunnel.
Yes, okay, I see. So you want some indication that the east-west gateway was involved, but not necessarily in the like usual TCP metrics, like byte sent, received, or whatnot.
I think we'd like to we may want to include that information, but maybe we just care about that information as kind of an infrastructural view of the east-west gateway. Like, oh, yeah, it's nice to know that traffic went to an east-west gateway, certainly for tracing and logging, that would be important. But from a metric viewpoint, right, it's just another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, what is the right dimension to show, honestly? Maybe it's cluster. Maybe it's just a flag saying I crossed. Obviously, the server-side ztunnel reports pretty much full fidelity, right? That part doesn't change at all.
Server-side ztunnel will report, I think, currently east-west gateway workload as a peer. I need to double check.
Because it's double H-bone, right? How would it even know
Yeah.
it was east-west gateway?
Because it does it by no, sorry. It will report unknown labels, but the way how it would know it by IP, right? So if it knows that it received a request from a certain IP, it can figure out the rest.
Okay, I think that's probably an even more important gap then. That doesn't sound right.
I will double check. I guess what you're saying that we probably should just read what the other workload tells us, in the sense that put in some baggage header or whatnot, and extract it from there. Yeah.
I think I'm on board with Louis on that, because really, if you think about it from the perspective, let's assume, like, if you think about the metric as reporting on the inner H-bone request, saying that this request originated, that the source of this inner H-bone request is east-west gateway is incorrect. So we want to make sure that we don't just rely on the 5-tuple, 4-tuple there. That I think baggage makes sense for that reason.
Let's see for a second. Okay, what are? I guess we need to think about what are the. Like, do you have a list of the dimensions and the metric just for the server-side ztunnel for a moment, right? Because obviously, namespace and service account can come from the inbound H-bone handshake. What isn't there is workload name.
Not that sorry, I'm opening a ticket where we have an example of what is currently reported. Shoot, I'm looking at the wrong document. Kit, if you present it, can you present the ticket link there in the document?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Which? Oh, this one.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah,
so the second line is the list of all labels, and you can see what are known there as well.
Do you mind zooming in, Keith? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. This one's not zoomed in.
There we go.
Here we go. Store.
We have a lot of cruft in here, don't we?
So there is a destination workload.
The destination stuff is fine, right?
This is the destination. Yeah, the source one is unknown.
Right, so we won't know the source canonical service. We could know if the receiving side knew the network ID and IP.
Yeah, I think that the current ztunnel implementation can get some additional fields populated. It just doesn't do it, but it's in principle possible.
Right, but certainly, like source workload namespace, that's not unknown, right? We know that from the data path.
From the identity and the
yeah, we know that from the identity.
Yeah, I think stuff like source clusters.
We don't know the source. I think workload from namespace from my identity in the general case, because there might be a waypoint in the way.
Yeah, then the source workload namespace is the waypoint. That's fine.
Oh,
just like it would be internally.
Right. Yeah, so I think that the issues, and this goes to the baggage thing you mentioned, Mikhail, I think the issues are those things, especially multi-network, where the Z tunnels got a different view the Z tunnel got a different view, and we need the source, we need the data path to tell us, because the control plane or the east-west gateway is not reliable.
The big question here, right, and the big one that underlies all of this, right, either the baggage is in the data plane, which we've tried to avoid, or this state is distributed to Z tunnel over WDS, and the only piece of baggage required is the network ID.
We do need some additional information, like we still need to somehow match requests that came into the tunnel to a workload.
Right. So if Istio D reported all the IP address metadata for all networks to all Z tunnels, and you received the network ID of the client, well, that's how it works in the local network.
I think.
I see where you're crying, Keith, but you get where I'm going here, right?
I think the problem is that if request comes from east-west gateway, you cannot really, you don't have the source workload IP that you can look up for.
Right, but we could fix that, right? Like, I think it's reasonable to say, like, the client-side Z tunnel, the client-side waypoint could send the source workload IP and the network ID.
But why not baggage? Like at that point, you're already sending everything.
Right, because of bandwidth, Keith, right?
I mean, so network ID.
We're gonna have to have this debate, right? Because now we're saying the way that Z-tunnel resolves metadata for a local endpoint is radically different to how Z-tunnel resolves metadata for a remote endpoint. Right, they're now completely different processes.
Not a remote endpoint strictly. Okay, so we can make that choice, right? So it doesn't have to be local versus remote. It can be different networks. I think the question is split horizon.
Like it's by network, right? Because now we don't just have a 5-tuple, we have a 6-tuple. Network ID is the other piece of information.
There's still an alternative of reporting as a peer for L4 metrics, the east-west gateway itself, right? And I understand that's internal sort of implementation, but like when customers configure stuff, they have to configure this east-west gateway explicitly.
Right. So then we're in the world of what? So there's like either we fix it so we provide complete visibility, right, and we get exact equivalence between local network and cross network.
Yep.
Or we say that's too hard. There will be ramifications in telemetry. Here are those ramifications, and here's how that's going to work. And then what are the trade-offs? Right, like you say, the source will now become the east-west gateway in some representation of that. Source namespace we would still know because of HBone. Right, so now we're in a world of like trying to decide on a metric by metric basis which things we're not going to fully propagate and which ones we are. And any consumer of that will have to know and understand it. And there will be a clear difference between within one network and across two networks.
I think there will be, regardless of that, difference between for metrics that describe traffic going from one network to another, because you always will have some sort of cluster if you don't include east-west gateway that will tell you that, well, it's from a different cluster. Or if you include east-west gateway, you will see there that it's east-west gateway.
It's just different, right? Like, but we have to decide, and we need to be quite detailed in the decision, right? And there's let's say we said, well, we're going to show you like source app is unknown, okay. That's probably, if we're going to say this came to an east-west gateway, we might have to have another dimension, right? Because we wouldn't want to confuse source workload namespace because we know the real one. So like that's the type of stuff we would have to make a decision there. Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
Keith, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a while ago when we were doing ambient beta, we had a telemetry doc. I think you linked to the issue in the agenda, Mikhail. I think we're going to need another pass, another version of that doc for just ambient telemetry revamped. Not necessarily going to change the contract, but just to reevaluate the decisions and sort of take a fresh look at things now that we're in a multi-cluster ambient world, because I think the trade-offs aren't as clear. Thinking about, well, let me go to this point first, and then I'll go to beta. I'm not convinced that going back to baggage for everything is controversial. I know, but like, I'm not convinced that going back to baggage for everything wouldn't be horrible. I think
Yeah, I think there's a fair conversation to be had there, Keith. We just need to have it, right? And maybe you need some measurement. That's all.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Because I do think even in the Envoy case, there's going to be ramifications for Sidecar when we do migration and even like interop between
Right.
ambient and Sidecar. Calling WDS, like I already have at least one report in Slack of someone having a bunch of memory usage because of the WDS workloads being sorted in Envoy. So like baggage has a different set of trade-offs for sure. We need to measure them and discuss it. But it would at least, that possibility might put to rest maybe the consistency problem. We need to discuss it.
Sorry, Keith, can you explain what baggage means?
It's
sure.
It's just a header in HTTP Connect where we put a bunch of, or used to put a bunch of metadata, not directly related to like the routing of the request.
Okay.
But for all intents and purposes, think of it as just an additional header in the HBone HTTP Connect in response.
Is that how we used to do in ambient?
I don't think so. I think
so. Yeah.
Maybe
No,
in some of the earliest
we discussed
alphas.
it. We discussed it in the very, very earliest alphas. There was, I think, when we were using Envoy Z-Tunnel, there was a prototype that Quark did with it, but we rather quickly moved away from it when we added Z-Tunnel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
And one of the places where baggage came from originally was in our usage in Sidecar, right? And I want to make sure I bring this point up. One of the reasons I think it's not as bad as what you might be thinking about when it comes to Sidecar is because the baggage we did in Sidecar actually mutated the customer request, the user request.
Right.
So because now we're tunneling, I have a lot less of an aversion to the idea of baggage because it terminates and doesn't mutate the user request, which has, it's just pure overhead that gets removed by the time it gets to the app container. So that might be worth, I think that definitely is worth putting in like a ambient telemetry strategy document to sort of evaluate the trade-offs of these now that we've got multi-cluster context. Going all the way back, because we've got 20 minutes left in the meeting, going all the way back to beta, I don't think we're going to be able to solve all these questions in this meeting. What do we, I think the question boils down to, do we take another release to solve telemetry? Or do we say this is, or before marking, let me be more specific. We take another release to solve telemetry before marking as beta. Or do we say this is beta with metrics as an asterisk, limitation-wise? Like we've got E2E tests, we've got customer feedback. I think waiting is probably the best because a big part of our a big part of what users look to mesh for is telemetry.
Right.
But it might also be worthwhile.
Oh, go ahead,
Go
Keith.
ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it also might, even though a lot of our value add is metrics, even if we say this is not quite beta yet, because we want to get metrics right, it might be valuable to say, here we are on the beta pathway, and so we've got E2E tests and just sort of help users make their own decisions. If here's the current state, we're going to get this done, and then the next release, hopefully, here's what's done. I think maybe an update might be reasonable and saying we're close. We just didn't want to market as beta without these things. So there's a couple of different options.
I guess my thought is that we're not missing telemetry altogether. The telemetry exists, but you begin to lose visibility about the specific destination workload when crossing cluster boundaries. So for instance, you should still be able to see that, like, when calls from cluster A to some other cluster for service reviews happen, we see higher latency than we expect. It would be great to have more granularity on that data, the sort of granularity that we're accustomed to, but the fundamental data needed to operate your service at scale appears to still be intact, just with less granularity than we would prefer.
Yeah, unfortunately, our feature evolution criteria, by the way, say nothing about metrics.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, GA, right?
Well, that's a little different. As it talks about other characteristics, but yeah, it doesn't actually. I think it's because we just think of metrics as an intrinsic part of the feature, which is why we didn't call it out.
I think that sounds more right. I mean,
Right.
that's three key features of Istio, right? Observability, security, traffic management.
Yeah, this one's a little tough. So I guess there's two parts, right? If we shipped it today, right, we know that telemetry is not beta, right? If we treat the telemetry as a feature, the feature for telemetry would not be beta, right? Because it's going to change. It would have to change. Yeah. So there's no getting around that part. So the question is, do we treat telemetry as an intrinsic part of the feature itself or not? That's the decision.
Louis, the change that you're talking about, is that a change from unknown to known, like where we currently have these unknown values, we'll have known values?
At least some of them.
A fundamental, like, format change where
at least some of them will change from unknown to known. I think they would have
right,
to.
and they could change the reporter. So Mitch, I think you're asking, is the contract going to change, essentially, exactly. Right? And I think potentially, if we go to next hop-based telemetry, that could very easily change. If we go to baggage-based, that, the way that metrics are surfaced, depending on, I mean, that can potentially change for all of ambient in some ways, as long as we keep the actual format of the metrics around. Yeah, there's just, I think we need a refresh because our initial strategy for telemetry did not conceive of multi-cluster, based on what I can tell. And so I do think there could be some contract changes.
Yeah, I guess if contract changes are on the table, then I would say we don't have beta quality yet. If all we're doing is strictly adding data, going from less granularity to more granularity, I could see calling that beta. But this would mean that someone who builds a telemetry dashboard on what we have today will find it broken with what we have tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that might be where we are. Unfortunately, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what might be on the table.
That's exactly where we are. And like some of the options we discussed will result in different values for this metrics, even where they're currently reported. Like you can search in this bug, we report like destination principal as East-West Gateway in L7 metrics for some reason. That is probably going to change.
Yeah,
right. There will be some changes to metrics, that's for sure. Maybe one other way to look at it as like give it like final push is maybe we can consider look at like use cases that are addressed with the current state of ambient multi-cluster rather than look at all individual like features, in the sense that there is a non-empty set of customers for sure that just outright disable metrics and don't rely on that. And ambient multi-cluster for those is still kind of useful. But that's just like a suggestion that we might look at it not from the point of view that each feature needs a metric as a like beta gating criteria, but if we have enough use cases that are covered by the current state of the implementation. But yeah,
I mean, I can imagine for users who have maybe eBPF instrumented network, what do they call it, flow logs, or metrics from another place, like my Hubble or something like that, and that's the only granularity that they need, that they really care about, and or maybe they've got their applications instrumented with telemetry, then sure, right? Maybe this is valuable for those users, and that's why I think maybe like an update on what exists today and what might change might be useful to help users make that decision. But I just think because Istio's value proposition is metrics in a lot of cases, is telemetry in a lot of cases, and you think that might change, it's just going to be tough, I think, to say it's beta.
yeah, fair enough. I think I got my answer. Ultimately, I'm still going to work on fixing the metrics. So if we don't get it to better in this release, like that's fine by me. I at least understand where we stand. Cool. Thank you very much. I will bring up a proposal on Wednesday for various options how metrics might look and how to implement that. And we will have a more detailed discussion there. And in the Slack, there is already a Slack thread where we started the discussion.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the amount of effort and detail you put into this.
You're very much welcome. Thank you very much for feedback.
All right, yeah, thanks, Mike.
So should we capture just a note? Just to, I
Yeah,
can do
good
that,
call.
Keith, while you're...
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if you can sort of put current state and decision points there, that would be great. Next, only other topic on the agenda is from me, and it's just whenever it's around release time, I think about what kind of blogs can we put out to talk about the current state. I think one maybe on an ambient multi-cluster might be useful. We have the last one we had was at the alpha. An update for beta might be useful, or sorry, an update for sort of where we are on the road to beta might be useful. Not sure. Other ones that pop into my head about maybe the agent gateway work that we are kicking off. Are there any others? I just wanted to bring this up and see if people had ideas on blog topics.
This is the release blog, please.
Yes. Not just the release blog, but we also, around release times, you might have sort of thematic blogs announcing a feature. So we had a blog post around the 127 release announcing Ambience multi-cluster alpha. We had a blog post about the Gateway API inference extension reaching alpha. Didn't know if they just wanted to have people thinking about other like what other sorts of things like that, thematic or feature-based blogs that we want to have around release time.
Okay, got it. So for the agent gateway, do you think it's ready to have a blog? Because I don't think there's much code finish up yet. Is that correct for the 129 release?
Well, John did get a PR merge for the deployer part, and Jackie is, I think, 50 to 60% of the way done with the actual implementation of programming it, at least for Ingress. So.
But would people be able to use it? I guess that's my question for 129.
Yeah, with Gateway API, they wouldn't necessarily have a lot of the there's no APIs yet for a lot of the AI features, but you should be able to attach an HTTP route to it by 129.
Okay,
is the
cool.
idea.
So that's probably worth, I agree, that's probably worth its own blog just on that. So if they're not using AI function, but just using microservice gateway features, they could choose agent gateway as a choice if they want to.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, an experiment to play with, provide feedback, etc.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good one. And I don't know if we plan to do any performance. It might be interesting to share the performance number too from a community perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
that is actually a beta requirement.
All right. Okay. No, but that's beta right now. We're not climbing.
Yeah,
beta.
no. Yeah. So I think you could defer it, Keith, if you wanted. If people wanted to save themselves time and effort, if we're not going to market beta, you don't have to do that.
I agree.
But are we talking performance for multi-cluster or
Agent gateway.
Agent gateway?
Oh, sorry. I was too busy writing notes to realize.
Yeah, you were taking notes, Louis.
Sorry.
Yeah, because we
Ignore me.
publish
muted.
performance data. I was just thinking it would be more interesting from an Istio community perspective, publishing performance data. Because otherwise, why would people using this new thing?
Yeah, no, I agree. From a public service perspective, I think that's useful to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, the goal with this topic is just to get people thinking about blog content. So if other ideas pop up, or if people look at their release notes and think other things could use a blog, just highlight it, and we can maybe look to try to find authors for it. All right. Any other topics?
Oh, sorry. I just had one quick topic. Video recordings versus AI notes. How do people feel? Because there's now a built-in feature here that seems to take notes, and I don't think a lot of people watch the videos.
I have multiple times, for what it's worth, especially on the multi-cluster discussions, of having to remind myself why we decided to do waypoint local cluster versus that. Like, a lot of those are like, I definitely needed a video to try to understand the different points, ins and outs, etc. I think I agree with the chat that both probably are useful.
Yeah, you might be surprised if you go to our YouTube. Sometimes some meeting actually have like 50 views, and it's not costing us anything as long as it's automated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the automation is working, question mark. But I was wondering how good the AI notes would be. And if we had the AI notes, would they meet your requirement, Keith? I don't know. The podcasting, well, yeah. If that's what you like to listen to in your car, okay.
Yeah, I think the AI notes has been pretty good. We should be able to turn it on. It would be super cool if we can link it to the YouTube one, but that probably needs investigation.
Or just another doc attached to the calendar entry with notes go.
Yeah, or somehow, yeah. Because I don't know if we recorded, how could we make it available to the long host people?
Yeah. Well, the YouTube transcription is a totally different feature than the note-taking Gemini would do inside a Google Meet. Have we actually tested it? We should test it.
Aren't we getting note-taking right now? Yeah, it's already.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think it's on.
I'm reading the notes that Gemini has taken from this meeting. They're in the top right-hand corner of my screen with like the little.
Oh, yes, they're not. I think there's a setting to persist them somewhere.
Yeah, I think I get them emailed to me every week.
Yeah, they're attached to the calendar event.
I guess I should go read those then. I didn't even notice.
Oh, yeah.
Attaching to the calendar event is kind of a pain in the ass, but okay.
But
it is really fun to read Gemini notes of us talking about whether or not we have Gemini notes.
Yeah, see, it's not live, right? If I click the button, right, it's laggy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we should all go read the notes 30 minutes after this meeting, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I've read one when I missed one of the meeting. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually pretty good.
All right, we can leave this as an open topic. We don't have to resolve anything now, but maybe I'll make a note to go read the notes. So TOC members, review notes and decide if they're any good.
Yeah, by the way, I do see our meeting recording published 3 weeks ago. Last one published December 17th, so not bad. Not sure if the January one is published or not. But there's very low view, still 15 views, not bad. And as time goes by, it might reach 100 view.
Anyway, we don't have to spend any more time on this.
All right.
All right.
Okay, I saw your comment, Jack. Okay, evaluate access issues.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. Make sure that they're accessible to people, to view at least.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not to edit. Okay.
All right. I think that's right around time, so we'll call it here. Thanks, folks, for joining, and be sure to join our Wednesday meeting if there are other topics to discuss. Take care, everybody, and happy 2020. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Be sure to like and subscribe to the new podcast.
There we
Smash
go.
that like button, Mike.
Don't forget to subscribe. Yeah. See y'all. Bye.